Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible, verse by verse, a very plain and simple verse by verse, chapter by chapter, and book by book study through the entire Bible. We have started in the book of Genesis, and we're going to continue there. Let me remind you that I said that I'm doing a slow crawl through the first 11 chapters of Genesis because there's a lot to unpack. And I say that because there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack in just in understanding life and understanding the very foundational principles. I think, but understanding where we are, understanding just again a lot of things that's life, spiritually, especially spiritually. So we've been talking about, again, we're in Genesis chapter 1, and then let me read again in verse 1. It says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now, let me say this again so that we can keep continuity that, one, as we study the book of Genesis, we have to remember that the book of Genesis was not designed to be a history book in the sense of the history of the world. Of course, I say that in light of the fact that he opens the book with the proclamation that God created the heaven and the earth. So Genesis wasn't designed to be, a tell-all of the beginnings and the universe and all that. The book of Genesis was not designed to be a science book or anthropology, or we can go on and on in terms of under the disciplines of science. That's not what Genesis is for. Genesis is proclaiming the claims of God. He created the heaven and the earth, and then, as we will see, very streamlined, very specific and focused thoughts and purpose that God designed and wanted us to know. And so with that said, and I say this again, there are no claims of science that contradict the Bible. And so again, we will attempt to balance that out. God was not attempting to appease the scientific world. I say that because sometimes Christians do. For example, the term apologetics. And you hear the term apologists and apologetics. Well, we hear it more in the Christian world because there's actually a whole field of study of apologetics. And you heard in politics, and I heard it mostly, it seemed like during the Obama years, starting with his campaign, that people were saying you're an Obama apologist or you're this apologist. And an apologist was just simply someone who defended their position. And obviously, in the Christian application, it is one who defends the faith. And one of the things the reason why the apologist kind of developed is, remember, during the Roman/Greek era of philosophy and wisdom, the study of wisdom, the pursuit of wisdom, the intellectuals, Christians who became intellectuals, Greek intellectuals became Christians, sought to, by intellectual means, win over their fellow intellectuals, and in a sense, that's how apologists came. Now, in doing so, you sort of play by the same rules, and even now, today, and we're talking centuries later, apologists today think that by reason, if we apply enough reason, we will win over, by intellectual means, the sinner. Not true. That's just simply not true. It may be the case for a very, very small few, which becomes the exception to the rule, but in general, no, it's not. Think about this. If Jesus can come, it's been 3.5 years in a public ministry, and then, you still had people reject him. It's not about reason. Well, in the sense, when we talk about creation here, as we get into the first chapter of Genesis, with creation, you have certain Christian apologists who seek to try to win over the scientific world, I think by intellectual means, and they just don't care. Now, I say that because you look at terms, even what became known as creationism. So you would have the term creationalism versus evolution. Creationalist versus evolutionist. So the creationists were a compromise. Let's not call it the Bible, right? It's called creation. Well, it still didn't matter because evolutionists and people who ascribe to evolution think the Bible is silly, foolish. So it doesn't matter what you call it. They think it's foolish. They think it's stupid. They think we're stupid. So again, all of those things, they really don't matter because they just don't care, right? And then the next thing I want to get into is look at this in terms of the age of the earth. And it says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And then verse 2, the earth was formless and emptiness. I'm going to stop and I'll come back to that in a moment. But the idea that the age of the earth becomes really a much of a discussion today, debate. And one of the thoughts is that if the Bible is wrong and science is right, then you could throw away the Bible, right? Now, in reality, it's a foolish notion, and we will get more into that in the third chapter, because we're going to really explain sin. When you peel away all of the excuses and reasonings and all that, it just comes down to sin. That's why people reject the Bible. That's why evolution took off, because it offered a viable, or what they would consider plausible, explanation to the creation. In my opinion, it doesn't. I think evolution is as silly can get. That really, and this is my take, that the logic is that if you just give it enough time, then you would form. Now, Genesis makes very simple claims. God created the heavens and the earth. Well, okay, science says, well, no, leave God out of it. And this is important because they said, well, there is no God, or certainly the claims of a biblical God, throw that out. So that the world, and the universe proceeded just naturally from natural processes. And if you stop and think about this, and I think one of the reasons why God did this, created the universe the way he did, was putting irrefutable evidence. You really have to go out of your way to say God didn't do it. Now, thus, then, which is called the intelligent designer argument. And I think, again, Christians are just foolish for substituting. It's compromise. Now, their logic is, okay, well, let's not say God, let's not say the biblical narrative. And let's just say, well, simply put, if you study the universe, when you agree that a intelligent designer designed all of this? And the answer to that is no, they don't do that. Furthermore, I think we're coming to an age where they're going to say, well, fine, so what God created, I'm still rejecting. I'm rejecting him. So my thing is, you might as well say God. You might as well forget the intelligent design and all that. No, God claimed, because when you think about the Christianity, and I'm going to say Christianity is the only religion that I know of where God claims to be the creator of all things. Now, Islam certainly will say things like that. Remember, Islam studied Christianity. So understand that. Mormonism studied Christianity. In other words, they are just bad ripoffs and perversions, you could say, of Christianity. They But anyway, so when we talk about, let's go back now to Genesis chapter 1. Now, I want to finish this thought before I go. The idea is that the logic part is, again, when I'm saying is the logic part, no, we just proclaim what the Bible says. And then I said, I think God has put so many things. This is why we have millions of species. I think billions if you count if you combine every kind of creature, life form in the earth. And they're diverse life forms that, how is it that you create, how is it that you have all these form without God creating them? See how, again, they don't. When I say gaps, the 14 billion years is the figure. Well, let's give 14 billion years enough to form all of this. Well, then I'm going to say, how is it that in the 14 billion years that life hasn't formed on other planets? And by life, I mean life that is indigenous to those planets, atmospheres, and conditions. Remember, Earth, we are indigenous to this atmosphere, right? The atmosphere pressure, I think it's 14 point something pounds per square inch. We cannot survive and live on Mars or any other planet for that matter. We're specifically, and just to go outside of this atmosphere, you have to have a suit on to survive. And it's not even, I don't know if they know how long you could survive without the suit. So that, anyway, so my thing is, but why not? Why don't we have Martians? Why don't, like with the science fiction, why don't we have all of the science fiction? Why don't we have that? Why don't we have those science fiction things right there? You know what I mean? Why don't we? Why isn't there other life that's, again, indigenous to those conditions, planets, and stuff like that? Why is Earth the only one? As far as out there, we have telescopes now that can look very, very far, and with greater detail. No signs of life. In other words, if you were looking 2 billion light years away, 100, whatever light year. Okay, let's say if you was to look. Well, let me put it this way: if you were to, as far as we can look, right? As far as we can look out with detail. And let's suppose then, as far as we can look out, and then with relatively detail. In other words, you look at it and you say, we see a planet, right? How far can we see with our telescopes? And you see a planet. Now, reverse that. If there was alien life, if they was to look equally, so they would go, I see the solar system and that third planet from their sun. Wow, that's a different kind of planet more than anything else. See? Now, and again, my whole thing is that you look at You look at when we talk about the age of the earth, the age. This is important because science uses this to dismantle Christianity, and certainly in the consciousness of people. But again, I think it's kind of very silly how, anyway, just think about, there's so much we could go with this, with just male and female. And I'll get into that. I'll probably explore that when we get into some of the creation itself. But I want to kind of continue on with the thought is, in a sense, the age, okay? The age of the planet, the age of the universe, the age. Now, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the earth was. Now, I want to stop because one of the debates is when we talk about the age of the earth, and again, we was always taught that the universe is just 6,000 years old. Just 6,000. Maybe a little older, right? But 6,000 if you start with Genesis. Now, in order to establish that timeline, you have to kind of know the age of man, right? And if you are a person that up until 100, just a little over 100 years ago, maybe 120, 30 years ago, that argument wasn't in and of itself contested. So it wasn't until really the age of science that came along where they were able to do better calculations. So they had to say, well, okay, we kind of know it's not 6,000 years. There are a lot of things you can say, well, we kind of know it's not. So does this conflict with the Bible? Well, let me again say this. First and foremost, the Bible never said that the earth was 6,000 years old. There were certain theologians, certain preachers who said the earth was 6,000 years old. God never said that. So remember I said that the Bible has never been, science has never contradicted that. The Bible, so the Bible never said that. So the other question, so the point then, the question becomes, when did this happen? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. When did he create the heavens and the earth? See, when did he create it? And that's the question. And I'm going to pick it up in the next study. So I'll pick it up next time. In our next study, we'll continue on with this thought. All right, guys, see you in the next study.